Hey everyone, my name is Charlie and this is Charlie, and today we are here to share our Booker Prize long list rankings as well as our Charlie science, which will hopefully predict a shortlist. We did it last year and our science worked a little bit last year in terms of predicting what the shortlist was going to be. However, we aren't sure whether it's going to be as close this year because we do seem to have very different opinions when it comes to the books on the Booker Prize long list this year. But we will
both in terms of each other and in terms of from the judges. So both of those things.
I'd say it's been a bit of a contentious year. I did end up feeling a bit fed up with reading the long list at one point and just gave up, which is why I haven't read all of the long list this time round. How many did you read?
I've read 10 out of 13. Well, one obviously a DNF, so 9 technically finished, 1 DNF, and then 3 I've still got to read. So, but do you know what? For me, I think it's not. Maybe it's the same for you as well. I'm going to head. I own 2 of the books I haven't read, and I'm happy. I'm still going to read them. It's just that I never wanted to read this list. I never wanted to read. I didn't want. This list I never wanted to rush, as opposed to, like, I feel like sometimes when I read all the lists I get carried away with the excitement, and I think you're probably the same. Like, we didn't want to read for the sake of read, force reading.
When they announced the dates that the winner was going to be announced, we said that gives us more time to actually read the books because we've got till November from July. I think we also got into the spirit of, well, we're going to be talking about the shortlist, and we didn't want to do that based entirely off the predictions that we'd made.
Yeah.
Especially when it seems that some of our predictions were incredibly wrong. This is just based on what the long list was and how we felt at the time. And also, I borrowed all these books from the library and I had a very limited time to get to them because they were Booker books, so a lot of people wanted to get them read as well.
And I audio booked the majority of the ones I listened that I got, so I had a different experience for that reason. So yeah, we both had different experiences for different reasons. But yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I always think I still think, yes, I know there are loads of people have been slating this year's Booker list, and I know we have said some things as well.
We've done this year.
But that being said, I still I love reading the Booker. I love reading, obviously the same for the Women's Prize, and it's because it helps you discover things that you would never have normally done. And I think that you've got some surprises as well. I already know that for some of the ones that we have spoken about. So yeah, I think it's a brilliant thing, and I will always love following the Booker. I just think, yeah. So yeah, I think it's a good prize to follow. And I feel like it does often match my reading taste. Not always, as we have found this year.
I think with all that being said, what we're going to do is we are going to go in ascending order from the book we liked the least and work our way to our top book. And then we will let you know what the Charlie science says. So, Charlie, what book?
I'm so excited for this. I'm sorry. me and Charlie earlier, should we tell everybody earlier? We were holding off trying to talk about it. We were busting to talk about every little bit, and we've been so good. And we were Charlie was nope, let's save it all for the filming. So yeah, it's been hard for us, but we yeah.
Originally, I had said to Charlie about sending me her list of books, and then I said no, I want the surprise as well. So Charlie, what book comes in at number 13 for you?
Western Lane. I think that's the same for you. What is it? Actually, I've got a theory. Can I tell you my theory? I think is going to be your 13th.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess Prophet Song is going to be your 13th.
No. So I'll give you the book, and then we can talk about why.
Yeah.
But the book I have in at number 13 is All the Little Bird Hearts.
Dun, dun, dun.
Why did you put Western Lane in at number 13?
Because it's the only one I've DNF'd.
So for me, this is a book that I haven't read entirely, but as you know, originally I was wary to read this book because of the font. And then Charlie and I had said that the books that we hadn't read, what we would do is we would sample chapters and we would base our rankings on that. And I read a chapter of this, and it's not that I didn't care for the narratorial voice, because I was getting reminded of Anita Bruckner and Rachel Cusk at times, but it also felt as though the voice was a little bit all over the place in the first chapter. And then I went to Kieran's Discord group and I wanted to see what the consensus was there. And I was reading the thoughts of people whose opinions I tend to agree with. And I realised that I just don't think that this is going to be a book for me.
Yeah, that's fair.
At number 12 for me is How to Build a Boat. So what's yours?
Pearl.
Similar to your reasons for Western Lane, I DNF'd How to Build a Boat. I was 50 pages in and I realised that I was basically already criticising the book too heavily at 50 pages in for what I imagined it was going to be doing. And I was reading it under that lens. So because I'd got this view of it, I went to Discord again, I spoke to you, and ultimately decided to DNF this one because I, one, didn't think it was fair to the book to be reading it like that. Again, you know, loads of people actually enjoy this book. I wouldn't say I'm in the minority disliking it and disliking what I read. But again, I think it was just fell under the category of a book that I wouldn't have liked myself, so there was little point in me continuing. So why did you choose Pearl?
I just didn't click with it. I did read the whole entire thing, obviously, and like at the beginning I was kind of hopeful, but it just felt so mild that by the end of it I was just irritated by it. I just felt really annoyed by it, and it could be partly, obviously, like I said, I'm audiobooking these, so I think maybe I didn't really gel with the narrator either. So I think those two things combined, by the end of it I was like, oh, I just want this book done, and I actually sped the book up, which I don't do. Charlie does do this quite regularly. Charlie does do this quite regularly, but yeah, this isn't something I do unless I'm really not in clicking with it. So my 11th place is In Ascension by Martin MacInnes.
In 11th place for me is Western Lane. I didn't finish In Ascension.
I found it extremely boring.
Is that the main reason that you have put it in this place, that you found it boring?
I think the writing is a really good quality. Objectively, I think this is a really stunningly written book. I'm just not the audience for it, and it's like there was bits of it that dragged. So the bits I did enjoy bits of it, and there were bits I could see that it was like quite like moments of like and glimpses for me of like 5-star writing. But for me, I just don't think this is never going to be a Charlie book, and it was like, yeah, I'm just the wrong audience for it. I can appreciate like if this I could. Obviously, as we will say, I think this probably will get shortlisted. I think if the people that love this one will love it hard, and just for me, I was just bored. I was bored by a lot of it, and yeah.
For me, this was one that the library wanted back, and I just didn't have the impetus to read a 600-page book in the very short amount of time I had left to read it. And I think it says a lot about this book in that it might have been the start of when I was getting fed up with the book of books. I don't know. But it took me a week to read 200 pages of it. And I found that the story was unnecessarily slow.
Yeah.
It felt very languid for no reason. But it is a bit higher for me, but we'll get to that. And the reason I put Western Lane in at number 11 is just because I found it a bit bland. Like I continued to
finish this one. You did finish this one.
Yeah. I continued to say about it that if it had been a short story, I think it would have been better done, because I could tell that the author was a short story writer from the way in which they wrote and the style of their prose. And I would be interested in reading their short stories. But in this form, I just don't feel like there was enough content to warrant the 180 pages that were there, because I feel like we got the gist of what they were saying within the first 10 pages of it, and it just it didn't like, as you know, grief is one of my favourite themes. It's why
Me too.
we put Marley Almeida in first place last year. But I just feel like it sounds horrible. This book bored me.
I feel like and this is the same with all of these, or any book really, you need a hook. So either it's got to be the writing, the characters, or the plot. And I feel like if one of those things isn't there, you can't like, it's hard. Like
So,
you need to have one of those things working for you to at least finish it.
I'll say my book that came in at number 10 is Pearl. I didn't finish this one.
Yes.
It wasn't a DNF. This wasn't a surprise to me. This was the first book that I bought because it was by an author who lives 45 minutes down the road. She's a poet. I was thinking, if I read this book, she might be somebody I want to invite to Poems and Pints. And I just kept getting irked by it. And similar to why I DNF'd How to Build a Boat, I was hate reading it at that point, and I just realised I never asked you what your 10th book was. So what's your 10th book? Sorry.
Sorry. No, like you finish off what you're saying about that, and then
as you can tell, my disdain for this book is such that I completely forgot to wait and see what Charlie's 10th book was. So, Charlie, what is your 10th book? Because I really have no more to say about it.
If I Survive You by Jonathan Escoffery. And this is when I've moved. This is like when I think you've had ones that have done that as well, Charlie, haven't you? Because it's just been, as I suspected when I first read it, it's just been, it's kind of forgotten in my mind, whereas other books I can remember much more of. I did really actually like some of the writing, because it's kind of like interconnected short stories, but it is still a novel, and I can see it being still a novel. But bits of it I liked more than others. I did like the character of Trelawney, and the very first bit I read, the very first section, if it were, I really liked. I was like, yes, this is really good. But yeah, other bits of it I was a bit bored by again, and subsequently still I've forgotten. I feel like I can't really remember a lot of the plot, and which isn't the best thing.
That's one of the reasons that a few of these books moved around for me as well. Whereas I'd originally thought more of them, and then I realised that even though in some cases it's only been 3 weeks, for a lot of it I can probably only remember maybe one scene in some cases, and so that did move a few of them around for me.
It's so weird though, because there's like books that I haven't even really loved over the past, and I can literally still like some books that I can still literally vividly remember scenes, characters, and so it doesn't. I feel like that says something about the writing. I think if in books that you've even read recently that phase. My next book is Oh God's Time by Sebastian Barry.
Oh my goodness. My 9th is Prophet Song.
What's going to happen with our Charlie science? I have no idea.
This is so. As we said at the start of this video, we were going to have some very different opinions when it came to the books, and we've got our first major contention here. So, Charlie, why is Old God's Time in at number 9 for you?
This is a case of I actually really like this book, so I actually really did, and I actually remember a lot of it. I thought the writing was beautiful, but there was content warnings, which I like. This is what could happen with some of the ones above it. So I don't know whether really this should be high up, but obviously I haven't. It's so difficult.
It's just how you're feeling at this moment in time.
It's my feeling at this moment in time that it's just not. It's not. I really liked it, and the main character, especially by the end of that book, ironically. So the first third of it, I was like a bit meh about it, which is another reason why I feel like I've ranked it in this place, because the other books I've subsequently tried, I didn't feel like that. Even the ones I haven't fully read, the first bits of it were strong. Obviously, the latter bits of it might not be, but so the first third I found a little bit frustrating, and then once I got into it, I was like, okay, and then the last bit of that book I just thought was beautiful. It was very raw and brutal, and it has got a lot of content warnings, which I did find really hard, but I really connected with the main character, that being said. So I don't know, I kind of feel conflicted about this one. But I just like that. This is one that if it got shortlisted, I'd be happy for it. Do you know what I mean? Like here on upwards, for me, I don't know. So I don't know, because I haven't obviously read the other 3 I haven't read. I'm gambling.
That sounds good, that you have found 9 books that you have rated quite highly.
There's 3 that I'm not so sure I haven't read. So
when I got to my top 6, I was like, yeah, there we go. There's a good 6. And every book that came below that, I wasn't really the fondest of. But in terms of Prophet Song, which I haven't read, you have, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts when we get to it. Despite knowing how highly other people have rated it, when I read the start, I found the initial line a bit long-winded, and there was a sense of claustrophobia in the prose. I'll give it that. And for the type of tale that it is, that's probably makes sense. Again, because I hadn't read this book, I went to the Discord and I was seeing what other people were saying about this book. And the more I read that, the more, as I said about the earlier book, the people whose my opinions seemed to align with did not care for this book and had, some legitimate reasons why. I can't say that I like or dislike this book because I haven't read it, but currently I'm not like it's no longer a book that I necessarily want to read as soon as I find it. And it's one of those. Do you remember last year with was it The Colony?
Yes.
So I'm going to give my experience of what happened with The Colony in that I kept trying to get this book out of the library, and I kept getting told it was being moved from one library to the other. And remember, I thought that they got a vendetta against me, and then I ended up disliking the book. Yes. Well, in terms of Prophet Song, by the time my library got it onto their catalogue, there were so many people in front of me that should I have reserved it, it wouldn't have got to me until 2024. And then I went to Waterstones to buy it, and there was only one copy and it was torn, and I refused to pay £20 for it.
I knew this.
And so part of me has just continued to think, the universe is trying to tell you something about this book, Charlie. And I was just like, we're not having another Colony.
No. Do you know what? Fair enough.
that's what happened. A very superstitious Charlie decided that he wasn't going to risk it.
And you just didn't gel with the initial chapters.
Exactly, yeah.
Do you know what? That's fair enough. As I'll tell you, actually, when I get to it.
Anyway, my 8th book is If I Survive You. What's yours?
Southern Eden.
Ooh! Do you know, this... People... Oh, my goodness!
And I know your thoughts on it, so it's even more like...
This is...
You said this was going to happen.
You said it was going to happen, but I just didn't expect it to continue. It's like... we're actually showing people on the internet how to have polite disagreements.
No, because we're good. No, this is what because no, but we do like. It's difficult though. But we are. It's no. This just shows that we're not like we don't people please. Like we don't people please each other. So when we are having opinions that are similar, it's just because they're similar. Exactly. We are happy to have different opinions from each other. We are happy to do that.
Exactly, which also proves that when we do actually find a good book, it does mean that it's a good book. When we agree on a book, it means it must be good. So, why do you have the incredibly wrong opinion that this other agent deserves to be a
So, as like what you said about Prophet Song, almost exactly. Me and Charlie obviously go watch my video. We did a first line battle of these books. The first line of this book, I was like snore, to be honest with you. I actually was like, oh my god, this first line I
very
disliked. And I was like, actually, this is okay. This is okay. And I was enjoying it. At one point last night when I first finished reading them, the try chapter, because this is one I haven't obviously read. This is one I haven't read. Full disclaimers. When I finished reading it last night, I was like, actually put it above one of the other ones I haven't read. But then this morning I was thinking about it. I was like thinking about what ones I'm more drawn to read again, and then that's when I've shifted it again. But yeah, I'm so excited to read this book. A few of my subscribers have said that they loved it. Obviously, Charlie, I know what your thoughts are on this. Well, I think I'm fairly certain.
Sorry, go on.
Go on, yeah.
No, all I was going to say was I have to say that when I've been talking about Discord, to be completely transparent, I seem to be a bit of a contrarian when it comes to this other Eden in the Discord, because a lot of people don't actually care for this one and find it a bit pretentious and overwritten. So I'll talk about it more when I eventually...
It's just the middle of the pack for me. Obviously, as you can see, it's middle of the pack for me. It's 8th. It's middle of the pack. It's I'm happy to read it. I'm excited to read. I'm not excited to read it. I'm happy to read it.
But with If I Survive You, I'm having a similar experience that you're having in that I haven't read the entire thing. I just read the initial story in there, and I did think that was a very strong start, and I liked the narratorial voice. And again, used the Discord to help me figure out where I'd rank it. But similar to what you're saying, as I haven't read the entire thing, I didn't feel comfortable including it any higher because it didn't sit right with me for this book to be higher. What's your 7th book?
A Spell of Good Things.
In at number 7, I have In Ascension.
It's one you DNF'd, essentially.
Not that I DNF'd it. It's that I had to take the book back to the library. The reason I put In Ascension in at 7th place is because I was like thinking, if I saw In Ascension in the shortlist, would I be happy? Like, no. Just as a Charlie and Charlie Science, I was like, so the 6 books have to be 6 books that I really would, I wouldn't mind seeing in the shortlist. And so I was just like, In Ascension is one that, as you said when you were talking about it, there are some great quotable moments in there and some things that are written that make you think about the beauty of the world and the universe. And then
zooming in, zooming out. Yeah.
And then there are some really dreary, dull bits. And I was just like, why are you including this information? I don't need to know this information. And it would turn into almost like an essay at times, like where this person thought he was writing a popular science book.
It reminds me of what people say about The Martian. There's sections, apparently, I haven't read The Martian, but my husband's read it, and he does actually love it. But when they have those, there's meant to be those sections where blocks of texts about sciencey things, and that's what I feel like this is what this book has.
It's one of those where I just like, it feels like when they do the highbrow Oscar style of science fiction, where it's usually 2 people stuck on a flaming rocket that's falling to Earth. Yes, I'm thinking about Sandra Bullock. Do you know, I always seem to mention Sandra Bullock.
You do a lot, enough.
But yeah, and then you have the films that people actually enjoy with Sigourney Weaver. Why did you put A Spell of Good Things in number 7?
A little longer than a few minutes later.
If we've moved at all, it's because Zoom was incredibly mean to us and cut Charlie off right as she was about to give me her impressions of A Spell of Good Things.
I still am a bit concerned about this book because of the fact that I'm putting a lot of pressure on it because I really, 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 really love Stay With Me. And so I feel like it puts a lot of pressure on the next book you read by an author when you've literally loved it so much. So I tried the first 2 chapters of this, because the third one I think was another big chunk, and I really, really enjoyed it. Actually, I say really enjoyed because it's not the type of book you do enjoy, but I think it's really, really strong. I can see, because this is Gemma Books, I think Gemma Books' favourite so far from what she's read. So I am excited to carry on reading it. I'm scared. I feel like this is going to break my heart though. But yeah.
You see, I think that it is one of those books, but I have the converse experience to you in that I didn't much like Stay With Me. So when it comes to A Spell of Good Things, I feel like I might like it more than that one. Now we're heading into the top 6. Technically, these would be our individual shortlists.
But
oh
my days.
My 6th book is The House of Doors. What's yours?
My 6th place is How to Build a Boat.
Is this one that you'd actually read?
No, I haven't read it. So this is just first impressions. And I feel like I don't know whether I'm being biased because I've listened to, as I said to Charlie, I was messaging Charlie last night about this. I tried the chapters of it, and honestly, I could just have carried on this. If I had time last night, which I didn't actually have time, I feel like I could have just carried on listening to it all last night because the narrator is Kieran O'Brien. And
I remember you saying about this.
Yeah, he's a narrator in The Bee Sting. I think he narrates Dickie's chapters. I just loved his narration so much, and it just reminded me of that book, which obviously we haven't talked about that book yet. And so then I'm sort of like biased. So I'm just like, I don't know. I'm like, But I don't know whether it's the narrator or whether it's the book. So I feel like I'm hedging my bets. I'm putting it here. It could go up for me, but it could go down.
We know why I stopped reading that, but in terms of the House of Doors, I like the writing of that. I found some really beautiful prose in there, and it's made me want to go and read other books by this author. But I just...
You didn't wholeheartedly love it.
There's so much in this book that I do enjoy, and obviously putting it in at the 6th place, I believe that it's worthy of a spot on a shortlist. But even though I haven't read the author's other works, I feel as though this might not be their best work because it did feel derivative of a lot of other fiction that is out there at the moment. What's in 5th place for Charlie?
House of Doors. So this is a book that's kind of ranked similarly for both of us. This was my favourite for the longest time, and I didn't think anything was going to beat it. But then this is one I read before I did my favourites of the year so far, and it didn't appear on that list. So that is like a thing to be noted with this, even though it was my favourite when I first started reading this. I just think his writing's really good. His writing is really strong. But for me, this particular book wasn't a favourite of the year. It won't be a favourite of the year. But I feel like there's something about this book that I just feel like I feel like in some ways I'm like, it's kind of like my book in some ways that I want to win. But obviously there are other books that I love more. Like it's so difficult again. So because something about his writing, I'm like, it's such great quality. Like for me, this is like, it feels like a prize-winning book to me. Like, because of the layers of things that it does and how clever it is. But then for me personally, because I don't rate books in the cleverness way, I just it's my personal number.
For me, at number 5, I have Old God's Time.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
And that is only a very recent change. It was in at number 3 until this morning. And then when I looked at my rankings, this is a book that I have said this was the book I had listed when I did my predictions as being the book that I would like the least.
Yeah.
And that came from having read Sebastian Barry before and not liking what I read. And I just feel like the narratorial style in this was really well done. And I found it somewhat captivating, and I like the disorientation. I constantly compare it to Briefing for a Descent into Hell by Doris Lessing, more in terms of how it left me feeling, because there isn't really any alien planet in this, but there is that sensation of, is this character experiencing all of these things? Is there something hallucinatory going on? But this morning, when I was looking at these books, similar to what you said earlier, I was thinking, what do I remember about this book? And I realised I don't remember a whole lot, except from being captivated by the voice. I have said that I would like to reread it in future, but it's one of those things where it feels like a tundra in my mind. I can't really recall too much other than the experience.
I really do think with this book, the thing that I remember the most is like thinking this is a really good, you can tell this is a writer that has got experience. This is like, this author knows what he's doing. And that's why like when it, like in terms of the characterization and how I felt about the main character by the end, I was like, oh, because I was literally just so like, oh, for him. So I can see what you're saying about this. This is a really good book. Like, this is a good book. I can't argue with you about it.
Then at number 4, I have A Spell of Good Things.
Yeah. Okay.
What do you have?
I have All the Little Black Hearts.
Oh, obviously you have a completely different opinion to me with this book. However, have you read the entire thing?
Yes.
So you actually do have a fully formed opinion of this book. So let's give people a review.
The first bit I read of it, I found a little bit slow to get into. I did still like the writing, and I was trying to really soak it up, and I was listening to the audiobook. Again, this is another one on the audiobook where the chapters were really long, which it kind of annoys me when people do that. Like, I feel like and especially in terms of like, as a because I myself am neurodivergent, I'm dyspraxic, which does come under neurodivergent thing. So I feel like having a long chapters doesn't really work. Like for me, that especially I find that difficult. But anyway, that's a whole side note. But once I got into it and I've thought about it, and this is like afterwards, like thinking about this, I'm like, it actually does a lot of things really, really well. Like all the little references about the main characters' autism and other things. I just thought they were so subtly done. And I don't think every reader will necessarily pick up on that. Or maybe they won't even care about that. I don't know. I don't think the plot is outstanding on this. That is the truth. But it's the way the writer has written about the characters and all those nuances about being neurodivergent. I just think they're just done so cleverly, and I don't think it's being done in fiction. As I don't think I've seen it been done in adult fiction, particularly children's fiction. Elle McNichol does amazing things with that, but it stood out to me, so which is why, and I loved it with my heart. I loved it. Plus, as well, another thing, aside from all of that stuff, like I said about the character, the mother-daughter relationship in this was so strong, and I was relating to a lot of things within it.
I completely appreciate what you're saying about it, and I am willing to have my opinion changed. As you said, what you just said about the beginning of the book, it does seem like you're going to have to work your way in, and my opinion was mostly based on what I've seen other people saying about this one. I had a spell of good things in this place because, similar to you, I read the first chapters of it, and it's one that I could have seen myself continuing if I'd got the time to last night. Completely, again, in the converse to Prophet Song and to The Colony last year, seems to be making itself readily accessible to me. I have the e-galley from NetGalley. I got it out of the library earlier this year for the Women's Prize when I thought it was going to be on there, then never read it. And now I've got it and still haven't read it, and I've had it in my house for nearly 2 months now. So this is one of the books that the universe is saying to me, get it read. And I've just been like, no. And then I read the first 2 chapters and I thought, no, I could see myself appreciating this book. And when I was reading it, and looking at a Discord, I was thinking, if this were up to me, I would like to see that on the shortlist. So I put that in.
I think it talks about class as well, which is something that you always love in books, isn't it? So that's like something that's like, as well as like the harder hitting elements.
Now we're going into the top 3, Charlie.
These are books I properly love. Like all 3 of these books.
These 3 books that I'm about to say too.
I literally love these books. Like I feel like these are books, right? So right, there's a thing with books. Like I think if you will fight over them, and these 3 books. I'm not going to get into fisticuffs with Charlie. Don't worry. I'm not going to go up to.
That's what people want.
Yeah, they probably do want it. And I'm sure this is the same for your top 3. I freaking love these 3 books. Like, I love them so hard. Like, they are literally, like, I love them. Like, I properly love them.
So, that being said, what book comes in 3rd place for you?
Is this? I feel like this could be number 3. Could be the one that's the same. Is it going to be the same?
It's not going to be the same.
It's not going to be the same.
No, because you've already mentioned my 3rd book.
Okay. Study for Obedience.
Okay.
Or also what I call this book, Dead Bird book.
You call, yes, you do call this book Dead Bird book. In at number 3 for me is This Other Eden.
I am shocked. I am actually mind-blowingly shocked.
Once again, up until this morning, this book was in at number 1, but it moved for reasons that I'll get into when I talk about the top 2 books. This is one that I was off work and just nobody was here, so I took the book downstairs, sat in the corner and read it in 90 minutes. I talked about the experience of reading this where how did it go? Oh yeah, I kept thinking I was going to DNF it because everybody in the Discord seemed to be disliking it. And I thought, well, everyone hates it. It needs to be back at the library. Let's just put it down. And I didn't, because I kept thinking, well, what actually is happening? And just got through it. I like the prose. I like the poetry within the prose. I like the story that was being told. I understand that people keep going on about this bloody apple grafting, but it's literally just 2 sentences. It barely means anything to the plot. There is a mythology surrounding this. There is this aspect where we have the allegory to the Bible. I just thoroughly, wholeheartedly like this book. It's one of those situations where on any day the top 3 could move around in this scenario.
Mine couldn't. Mine couldn't. I'm hard fast about my 3. I'm like,
well, yeah. I feel like that about the book I have in at number 1. I will say that. But at the moment, I just feel like This Other Eden.
I literally haven't kept track of any of these, so I can't. I feel like I don't know.
I haven't either. But yeah, This Other Eden is the 3rd place at the moment. So why have you put Study for Obedience in at third place?
I like similar experience to what you had with this other reading. I actually this was like my bottom. I feel like it was like bottom of the pack for me. It wasn't actually bottom of the pack, but it was quite close to bottom of the pack. And then like it had a blurb by Sophie McIntosh, which she wrote the book that I really didn't like from the Women's Prize long list. So I was like, yeah, this book is just, and it's got like the cover. I hated the cover. The premise I just didn't like.
The first line did well in the first line battle.
Yes, and that's what I was going to say. This is what I was going to say. It all changed from then. So I literally had zero on paper. This book shouldn't have worked for me. And then we did our first line battle, and I was like, oh, actually, the writing's quite good. This is intriguing me. And this was the winner of it was nearly the winner because it was like winning, quite strong till quite far down. It was just really good. I read it. I gulped through it. I don't know why I loved it, but I just freaking loved it, and I want to read everything she ever writes. How I feel. I just love her writing style.
Well, now we're moving into the top two, and once again, as you've just said, I've not been keeping track of what we've got, but for me, the book that I have in at number 2 is The Bee Sting.
I feel like I know what your number 1 is then. Oh my day! No, God.
So what's your number 2?
The Bee Sting.
Oh,
we finally got one that's the same.
We finally have one. So we can just talk about this book in conjunction with one another. It's such a huge book, and I kept going on about that. And there is still part of me that wonders about the meandering of it. But there was that switch where I just thought, I have no problem with the classic authors doing this. So why should I mind about a modern novel that is over 600 pages that is just telling the story of a family? And really, as I keep seeing people saying, everything that's going wrong in this family could easily be fixed if they just spoke to each other.
Yeah. Well, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. It doesn't always work in every book. The miscommunication trope doesn't always work in every book, but it really works in this.
It works here because everyone has their own thing going on, and they're all at odds with each other. So the fact that they don't speak to each other doesn't come from the fact that they don't like each other. You know, they've got the 2 teenagers and then the 2 parents. The 2 parents are really struggling because I think this, weirdly, I've only just noticed this. This is a book that is kind of suffused with grief. Like, nothing in this book would have happened if it weren't for grief.
Yes, that's true. That's actually true. This
is kind of like a typical Charlie book.
Yeah, it is.
We put the grief book in at the top again. I know it's not the top book, but we did.
It will be. It will be the top. We'll see what Charlie Science does. I love books. This is like, it was bigger. It was put me off. It was the bottom of my pack for the fact that it was so big, and I was just like, it was the one I was least excited to get to because it was so big and 26-hour audiobook. But I knew it was about family, so I was a little bit more optimistic in terms of that element because I do love books about families, as does Charlie. And yeah, it just, the characters. The very first chapter of this, I was like, oh no, and actually Charlie said to me, no, Charlie, just and then. So then I read the second chapter, and I was just like PJ, and I was just like, oh my God. And then from then onwards, I was like, it just built and built and built. And it's just such a great book. I don't think the ending is 100% perfect for me personally, which is why it's not my ending. So that's why it's not my number 1. I wish the ending would have, I don't know what I would have wanted it to be done. Maybe I would have done a bit more explanation. I don't know.
It's more like I didn't want all of the loose ends to be tied up, and I understand.
Yeah, I don't mind open endings, but there's also I feel like we can't do any spoilers. We're not doing
spoilers, but
there were character voices that I didn't like being introduced to. That was something that annoyed me.
Yeah,
the extra character voices. I was like, why did no?
I understand the reason that the author ended it the way he ended it, because we kept getting told that this was a tragic comedy. And so having it end that way ends the way that a tragedy would end. And it's a somewhat ironic ending.
But it isn't explicit. So, like, yes, we do think that, but it's not explicit. But it's kind of explicit. So I don't know.
You can definitely see where it's going to go.
Yes.
You've had it hinted at what's happening, and it was foreshadowed. And that's one of the big things about this book is when I mentioned the classic novels before, I feel like this book is one that if you were to go back and reread it, which would probably take a few years to actually want to do that.
No, I would want to do it next year, 100%. I fucking love this book. I would want to read this book. I feel like this one,
there's a lot in there. No, sorry, I'm just saying I think there's a lot in there that you could get out, you could get more upon every reread as you do with the classic.
And to be noted, I was messaging Charlie frantically at the end because it literally made my heart go.
That happened to me as well, and it happened with.
I was messaging Charlie like terrified. Like there was moments I was messaging him going because I just needed that thing, and Charlie was just like, keep reading, keep reading,
just keep going.
And I was like, so I feel like actually I would want to read this more than my number one again, like quicker. But then it's just because
it's a strange one because of how slow and meandering the book has been before that. You get to that final 120 pages and everything is frantic and
which is brilliant. I feel like how it's done is so clever, and that's why it is number 2. Obviously,
it would definitely make a fantastic drama series.
Yes,
I have to stop doing that when it comes to the books. Thinking,
and I would want to see PJ again, the little Don, and also like Dickie and a cat. Like they all Imelda, even Imelda, like. They were even with Imelda's chapters. I feel like Imelda and Cass weren't my favourite, which makes it sound like I'm really horrible. But Imelda did have bits that I connected with her, and like Cass, I feel like as you go through, you are more drawn into her, like her story as well. Yeah, it's just really good. Like, yeah, I 100%. I probably will reread this next year because I do like to do that, as Charlie knows. I feel like we talked about it a lot, so we should get to the next one.
Well, it's nice that we agreed about one book.
Yes, one.
So I think that now is as good a time as any to reveal what book came in at number 1 for you.
Well, I can know what one's yours. I know.
There was only one left, but I haven't been paying attention. So what's yours?
Prophet Song.
Ah.
Which you
yes,
hated.
I should have guessed that. I should have guessed.
Yours is, which I know I don't even need to say.
Study for Obedience. Again, similar to this other Eden. An incredibly fast read. I picked it up from the library on a Tuesday afternoon. I drove home, went into the living room, sat down with the book, read the book, closed the book. I read this entire book within 90 minutes of receiving it from the library. I adored it. The elements of the horrific in there, the uneasiness that is just throughout it. What we said at the time, like this book was what I wanted Cursed Bread to be earlier in the year.
That's exactly right. 100%.
It's to me, it's just a very short, perfect book.
I loved Brian from Vickers did a review this morning, which I don't know whether you would have watched already. Yeah, and he pointed out some things which I was like, obviously I fucking love this book, so it wouldn't have it doesn't fit, but you know when people point things out and you're like, yes, and so I can see why this is your number 1. This is like a very strong book for me. Like I can't wait for Sarah Bernstein to just keep writing.
Well, it does quite a few things that I like. Stranger in a small town, possible supernatural elements. Yeah, it's another whole outsider narrative.
It's so clever. Like it's so clever what she does in that book. Like it's so clever, and I just loved it. I just really, really loved it.
The fairy tales we've seen in the past, maybe folk tales too. There
isn't anything I would change about it. That's 100% true. I literally love it so much.
Anyway, Prophet Song.
Full disclaimers: I don't read a whole lot of dystopic fiction, as Charlie knows. So I don't know whether if I had read a load of dystopic fiction, whether this would be as high as what it is. This was one that had written off as not being again one that I wasn't excited for, because it was not even being released for ages. I went shopping with my kids and went into Waterstones, picked it up for that reason, sat in a cafe, read the first chapter. That was in the summer holidays on Wednesday or Thursday. Then that Saturday, it was a bank holiday weekend. And it was raining outside, as it had done quite a lot in the summer holidays. And I literally, the whole day I spent with that book, and I didn't want to put it down. I feel like, and it reminded me so much of 1984, which I really, really loved that book. Side note, I just thought it was a really, really good book. I sped through it, and it really did destroy me, being honest.
Yeah.
I connected with Eilish. There's a mother in this book, Eilish, and I really connected with Eilish. I really felt for Eilish. I really love how he wrote about Eilish. And books like and the family element, obviously she's trying to protect her family, everything's crumbling around her, literally. Just really hard loved it.
Yeah, maybe I've had it slightly ruined for me by the Discord. I don't know. It's lowered my expectations, which might be a good thing if it does make it to the shortlist.
Do you like 1984? How do you feel about 1984?
Never read it.
There you go.
I have never read any Orwell.
But I'm not saying it's not exactly Orwell, but it's just something about it, and it's just really like, and it was from the very first bit. So I read the first chapter, like I said. So from chapter 2 onwards, I just didn't want to put it down. But then afterwards, I needed to go to the Disney Channel because it was just too much.
That's a fantastic review. They should put that on the cover. After reading this, I had to go to the Disney Channel.
I did, and then I just had to comfort myself with rom-coms, and I feel like I can't go back to that. I feel like I will go back to it because obviously that's why I'm keeping it, but I have to give myself space from this book because it really it physically broke my heart. It destroyed me. There's not a lot of light in this book. It's quite dark, and it's just this, like I said, it's like this crumbling world around her, and she's just trying to cling on to everything, and it's just I loved it so much. Yeah, that's why it's one.
Well, there we have it. There are our rankings.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
Are you ready to hear what the Charlie and Charlie science list has predicted?
I'm ready.
While we did have some scores that were the same when I added them together, I have decided that if the if the scores were very different, that's how I've made the decision as how to place them in this order. So, coming in 6th place, we have This Other Eden. In 5th place, we have A Spell of Good Things.
Yeah.
In 4th place, The House of Doors. 3rd place, Prophet Song. 2nd place, Study for Obedience. Which means in 1st place, we have The Bee Sting.
So what was missing from my lit that I like the most?
Everything. Yeah, everything. I think you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. No, you got 4 books in there. And I got 4 books in there.
There you go then. We're okay then.
So good at this. That being said, what do you think of our Charlie and Charlie science list? Do you think that we're going to be anywhere close?
I don't know what's going to happen this year. I feel like I have no idea.
Fair, last year it just came as a shock when we were rather close with the science predictions.
We were 5 out of 6.
5 out of 6 last year.
We were literally screaming.
Yeah, because when we made our predictions, which we're going to be doing in a minute, they weren't as...
we're rubbish.
Yeah.
I feel like our predictions are mostly rubbish.
The reason we have always maintained that this works is because we do tend to have such different opinions that they balance each other out.
Yeah.
But obviously this year, they've been a bit more different than they were in the past. We have conversed with one another, adjudicated, looked over all of the books, and Charlie has what we believe will make
actually think the judges are going to do
the shortlist. We don't know what the judges' tastes are, but this is, having talked it over and thought about the themes and everything, these are the 6 that we predict will be on there. But as we've talked about, our predictions last year just didn't work out.
Rubbish.
Charlie science is the way to go.
I think that is actually, I don't know. Is it going to be true this year? We'll see.
We'll find out.
So number 6, what we put for our predictions, number 6, I've got In Ascension. I just think the writing on this, I feel like if enough judges love it, they'll be pushing hard for it. So that's why I feel like it will have a spot on the list.
Yeah.
Number 5, one we both agree on, that's got a good history on the long list. We've got House of Doors.
Although I did say that I did wonder whether it could go the same way as Hilary Mantel. However, she had won it twice when The Mirror and the Light didn't make it through to the shortlist. So we'll see.
I do think this has got a really strong shot of being shortlisted. I just really, really think so. For one that's kind of a bit of a rogue choice, because neither Charlie's like this book particularly, again, is Pearl by Sian Hughes. I do think, whilst it's not a Charlie book, I do think enough readers have loved it, and I think if there's based upon the judging panel, I think this is quite an inoffensive book. So yeah,
we have to remember that when Charlie uses that word inoffensive, it means she does not think the book is good. The many times that I have heard Charlie use that word, it's always meant that she hasn't liked it.
Too well, be quiet. Stop telling people stuff.
Okay, and the third book?
How to Build a Boat.
Yes.
I feel like it came down to either All the Little Bird Hearts or How to Build a Boat, and I think How to Build a Boat will probably edge it. I haven't actually read that, neither has Charlie, but I feel like there's something about it, I think, that probably will.
Yeah, we just thought they'd like another Irish person in there.
I mean,
yeah,
maybe. We love the Irish fiction. Me and Charlie are properly loving the Irish fiction this year.
Well, I was mean to this book, but okay. And then our second book?
Bee Sting!
we're just so certain that the Bee Sting is going to get on there. This will be the one.
Not like if this
will be
doesn't
the
get
one.
on there,
I'll be shocked.
We're going to be angry. This is where we're going to be. We're going to be mad.
That, like we said last year, this will actually be the start of the Charlie and Charlie prize.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will actually be mad if this doesn't make it. I love this book. I love the characters. This is a book I will fight people for. I love it. I love it, love it, love it.
I mean, I don't get into fights, but I'll hold your earrings.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's our next one? Our third.
The one that this has been having loads of prize attention. So I say loads of prizes. The Giller Prize, that was what it was. It's on it's shortlisted for it's been listed for the Giller Prize. So which is a Canadian book prize, and it's Study for Obedience. Sorry.
Yeah, we're going to be championing the Bee Sting and Study for Obedience. That's it. Yeah. They're the only two books that the Charlies properly agree on. So
it is the only two books we agree on. therefore, I feel like this year those two books they have to get through.
Yeah,
because we don't agree very often. So
that's true.
We do sometimes.
Yeah, But as we said earlier, when we agree on a book, that means it's a good book. If we don't agree on a book, then well,
it still could be a good book. But...
still could be a good book, but it's not going to be a great one. This isn't the last you've seen of us this week, because we will be doing a live reaction to the shortlist over on Charlie's channel this Thursday.
I think we'll be live from 7:30.
We're going to be live at some point. I might be half dead having had the writers group in the afternoon, but I would
have been jumping around with the children.
Oh gosh, this is going to be a rather weary shortlist reaction. Come to us if you appreciate the haggard look. I'm
permanently rocking the haggard look. You're all right, mate, but me, I'm always fine.
Everything's just held back with sellotape and hairspray over here. So yeah, is there anything more you'd like to say, Charlie?
Thank you for watching. I'm sorry it's so long. Hopefully Charlie will put timestamps in the description. Please.
I've done timestamps before, but I'll try and figure it out.
I'll tell you how to do it.
Which books do you think are going to be making it onto the shortlist? Do you agree with mine and Charlie's estimations? Feel free to let us know in the comments, because
except for Over Bee Sting and Study for Obedience. I'm only joking.
No,
you can say
because we're not that Charlie will get particularly violent if you do, and she can't cope with another injunction. Yes, we hope that you enjoyed this video, because frankly we need some tea after all that. And until next time, that is all.